Well, hi, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here at the Ruttenberg Library. I wanted to come to you today, last day of the year, December 31st, and I wanted to present to you a book tag. And this is the end of year book tag. I saw this on Justin at Triumphal Reads, and he kindly tagged me in the video. I appreciate that. Thank you, Justin. And the original was done by Kiera the Scrivener, and so went and watched her video as well. Highly recommend going to see their channels. Great channels. I don't know a lot about Kiera the Scrivener. I just subscribed. I watched the video. Going to further check out some of the videos she puts up. But Justin, I've been watching him for a little over a year now, and you know, if you like history and you like nature writing and stuff, he reads a ton of stuff on both of those subjects. So go check out his channel over at Triumphal Reads, and I'll leave the link to both of those videos down in the description below. So anyway, again, this is a book tag. This is the end of year book tag. So this is like the finale, the final one. So let's go ahead and get started. So question number one, how did you feel about this reading year? And for me, as I have looked back at my list of the books that I have read, and I have read, I think by the end of today, possibly my book numbers will be about 80. And over 3/4 of the books that I read were fiction, which if you follow my channel, that is like totally opposite of what I normally do. Normally, I read about 3 out of every 4 books as nonfiction, typically American history in one way or another. But this last year, I tried to get involved in a lot more of the BookTube events, or at least follow along. Maybe I wasn't in on the the Voxers and some of the live chats and stuff, but I was following along, here at home, reading like March Mystery Madness. I think I mentioned this in previous video. I read a whole lot of stuff for March Mystery Madness that I normally would not have read. I think it was like 10 different mystery books, most of them in March, but I read some other ones after March because I just really enjoyed reading them. But it basically increased the number of fiction books because fiction just reads so much faster than nonfiction. At least it does for me anyway. I feel that, nonfiction, I have to kind of take my time with it and digest it a whole lot more than what I do with fictional reads. But I think I had a good reading year. If you're going by numbers, my numbers are about 20 books higher than normal. Like I said, I credit that to reading so much more fiction this year than I did nonfiction. But, I didn't really do anything that was special. I would also credit that I read several middle grade books that I normally don't read. I teach, if you're new to the channel, I teach middle school social studies, and one of the things that I used to do it a lot was I would try to follow along with, what the kids were reading at school. There was one time when I picked up the Harry Potter books just to kind of get a feel for what they were reading. And I hadn't done that in several years. And the kids were coming into class like for our World War II unit, or they were doing it last year for the Civil War unit. They were coming in and they were like, "Mr. Ruttenberg, have you read, such and such and such books that our language arts teacher has in her classroom?" And I was like, "No," or, I was either like, I have not read that one because it was a newer one that had come out, or it had been like 10 years since I read it and I just couldn't remember exactly what went on in the story. And so it was my mission this last summer, which I didn't do really well at this last summer because I did read mysteries, but into this last school year, starting in August, September, I started reading more of those middle grade books. And so, again, that increased the number of books that I read by quite a bit because they're fast reads. They might be 150 to 250 pages. They're smaller books. They're always a little simpler, and that doesn't take away from the story. There's some really good middle grade YA books out there. I wouldn't say that every single one is good, but there are some good ones. The ones that I read were good because, my classroom teacher in language arts has already, went through them. She knows which ones are good and which ones are not. And obviously she's not going to keep the ones that are not. So she gave me a stack at the beginning of the year of these books, and I've kept them by the lamp. And when I get to, like in the mornings, when I'm reading my nonfiction, and let's say it's a 25-page chapter and I get to the end of the chapter, I like, coming to the end of a chapter as a stopping spot. And so maybe I've got 15, 20 minutes left before I got to go to school. I would open up those middle grade books and start reading them for the final 15, 20 minutes. And so anyway, long story short, my fictional reading increased dramatically, and it did take away from some of my nonfiction reading. But overall, it was a good year. I do blame BookTube for this. Events like March Mystery Madness and March of the Mammoths and all of the book recommendations that you guys put out there. I blame you for flip-flopping my reading there. I hope to continue reading fiction, maybe not quite as many as I did this last year. I want to get back into more of my nonfiction reading. I have purchased, I don't know how many books over the last year, and I really need to get to reading them because my shelves are overflowing, and every once in a while I get somebody that asks about a certain book in the bookshelf behind me, and I'm like, I don't know, I haven't read it yet. And I want to be able to tell you and give you either a recommendation or not a recommendation for it. So anyway, that's in a nutshell how my reading year has been. So question number 2, what are 2 phases or authors you went through this year? Okay, so for me, the number 1 author that I read was John Grisham. I did a couple of rereads. He had 2 new books out. And then this year, I finally completed the Grisham library because he had some middle grade books. He's got the Theodore Boone series, and there was like 4 of them that I did not have because I just don't find them at Books Revisited, which is my typical spot where I go for my used books that I buy, and I just never could find them. I'd look and look and look and never could find them, and so I finally went to our local bookstore downtown and just bought paperback versions brand new. And if I find the hardback, I'll just, I'll replace it and do it that way. But I read 7 John Grishams altogether. I read, so 4 of those were from the Theodore Boone series. 2 of them were brand new books, and then I had 1 reread. The next author that I went through a lot of his books, and they were all brand new to me this year, but I hope to get back to him because he's got a whole slew of them just a bunch. I read 6 different Philip R. Craig books, which are the Martha's Vineyard murder mysteries. They are absolutely wonderful. They're very fast reads. I highly recommend them. They're about 240, 250 pages. Right in there is about how long they are. You can read them in an afternoon or 2 afternoons. They're really fast. They're very enjoyable. You can follow the characters from book to book. And highly recommend them. Like I said, I read 6 of those Martha's Vineyard. And then because I was reading middle grade a lot this year, I picked up Mike Lupica books, his sports books, and I read 3 of those. I have another one that's by the lamp that I haven't got to yet that I will be reading sometime, probably in January, and I'll try to get that one knocked out. But he's been fun to go back and revisit, and I need to go. I have somewhere his adult books that he wrote. They're sports related, and I really enjoyed them as well. But that's been a long time ago, so I need to go back and do rereads on those. So let's move on. Question number 3. What is the book you regret not reading? Okay, so this last year I put on my TBR list for the year, and it may have even been for the last 2 years, but I have had The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt by Edmund Morris. I have wanted to get to this trilogy. Theodore Roosevelt is one of my favorite people to learn about in history. There was just so much that he was involved in throughout his life, and you can argue the goods and the bads of his life, but he was a progressive. He worked for the common man, but at the same time, he was also an imperialist. So, I mean, there's goods and bads to him. But I've always found him very fascinating. I really look forward to the day that they get the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library done up in the Dakotas, where his farm was, or his ranch was. I know they've been doing fundraising for that. I have no idea when that will start. I think COVID kind of messed that up quite a bit. But me and a teacher friend do have a guy trip planned, the boys' day out, and we're going to go to the Dakotas and visit this when it gets built. So we're really excited about that. But I'm super excited to start this. I will be starting this probably tomorrow. That is my plan, is to start Theodore Roosevelt tomorrow, and just get myself started. If I get it started, I'll be all right. I do have a couple of buddy reads that I think like 4 buddy reads in the first 3 months that are planned. And so I'll have to kind of work around it. It might take me a little bit to get through it. But if you guys have never read Edmund Morris, his writing flows very well. He's a very, very good storyteller. And so, like I said, I'm very excited to dip into this. This is the one that I regret reading, but I'm going to make up for it. It's going to be the very first one that I get started on. Question number 4. What is something you learned from reading this year? So as I was kind of looking back at what I've been reading, I read a ton of stuff about the antebellum Civil War era, which to you guys is like, well, duh, you're the Civil War, you read tons of Civil War stuff, which is true. But I expanded this year, where I've been reading about slavery, I read some stuff on John Brown, I read some stuff on Frederick Douglass, but I also expanded it into the Reconstruction era, which is the new stuff for me. I have typically avoided Reconstruction for the simple fact that when I'm teaching things in class, I get to the end of the Civil War we assassinate Lincoln in class on the same day that, or 2 days before school's done. And then we got to get a test in, and, we got to get all this stuff done at the end of the year. And there is a lot of times in my classroom where I just don't have time to go in depth at all on Reconstruction. Now, don't judge me just yet. When the high school class picks up their freshman year, the kids get Reconstruction. That's the very first topic that they briefly go through the Civil War. Since I do 2-month-long unit on the Civil War, they summarize the Civil War in high school, and then they go in depth on Reconstruction. So they do get it on the high school side. And since that's the case, I have always, in my reading, I usually match it up with what I'm talking about in class. Since I typically don't get to Reconstruction, I've never read a whole lot on Reconstruction. And so this year I've been really trying to fix that. And I read Eric Foner's The Short History of Reconstruction, the Frederick Douglass biography, that we just got done reading in our buddy read. It covered a lot of the stuff in Reconstruction. And I read a biography on Thaddeus Stevens that got into Reconstruction. I have a Charles Sumner somewhere that I plan on reading that'll, help get into Reconstruction, the slavery issue into Reconstruction. So I've been hitting a lot on that. Long story short. And so I have learned way more about Reconstruction this year than I have in the past. And I hope to continue that. Number 5, what is a book you wished you talked about more? Okay, so something that I wish that I talked about more on my channel, or at least, gave a few videos that are specific, is just the topic of baseball in general. I read a lot of baseball books, and from time to time I'll do a book chat on them, but I would really like to put together a video over just baseball in general and what it means to me. Why do I love baseball? And I think I wrote that down I might get into that here this spring as baseball really gets going. But I guess if I had to pick one book that I wish I would have talked about more, it would have been the Tim Carver book called The Perfect Season. It was all about the 1998 baseball season. And that was when I was in high school, and my friends and I, we followed that whole home run race and all of the records that were, being broken or about to be broken. And I wish I'd talk about that more. It's just a love of mine. And so one of my goals for this year is to not only talk about just baseball in general and what it means to me, but I would like to do a baseball book recommendation video where I just share with you some of the baseball books that I have read over the past years that I found very gratifying. I know there's been people out there that have asked me for recommendations, and I've either emailed you back or I put it in the chat, or not chat. What is that thing called? The comments section, and I've sent you recommendations, but I would like to do a video over it, and then all I got to do is when somebody asks, I'll say, go check out my baseball recommendation video. And that's just something I would like to do. I don't know if there's anybody out there who'd be interested in it, but it is a love of mine. So number 6, let's move forward. What is a non-bookish highlight? So from this year, like new movie, a show, a song, podcast, etc. So I picked 2 for this. Recently, this last week, my 4-year-old, when we went to the library last week, we picked up the cartoon movie Sing, and now they've got Sing 2 out. I just found that out. But we watched that, and my 4-year-old laughed and laughed and laughed, and she loves it. She loves music. All the girls in my family, my wife, my 2 daughters, they just absolutely love music. They go around the house singing. My oldest daughter has got stuff on her phone where she's constantly listening. They've got Spotify lists. They've got my 4-year-old runs around singing. She always requests songs in the car, songs that you wouldn't even think that she would request, and she, in the certain parts that she sings, she just belts it, and it's absolutely adorable and fun to listen to and watch. And I know that my oldest daughter sings a lot. My wife, she's got a record player. That was 2 of her Christmas presents. She got new records, and I'm sure we're going to be listening to that pretty soon. And so anyway, we liked the movie Sing. That was a lot of fun to sit down and watch that. And then my new TV show that I have been kind of hooked on, that I've been watching, episode for episode every single night before bed. I'll watch 1, 2, or 3 episodes depending on how much time I have. I probably should be reading, but oh well. The show is Hawaii 5-0, and it's all about a police task force that works out of Hawaii, and it has definitely made me want to go visit the islands of Hawaii and just go sit on the beaches and enjoy the sun, and it's been a lot of fun because we absolutely love the show Lost as well, and so we've been able to see a bunch of the characters from Lost also play in Hawaii 5-0, and that's been kind of a fun little crossover. But that's my favorite highlight from the end of this year so far. Excuse me. Number 7, what is the greatest outlier in your books? So the book that does not match all the other books on my shelf, I guess, or the subject, and it's weird that I even have it because I do not read this subject. And the book that I pulled off the shelf, and don't ask me where I got it because I have it was I'm sure in a book sale somewhere, in a box of books that I wanted 4 or 5 others, and this was just in the box. But anyway, it's the favorite poems and ballads of Rudyard Kipling. And so this is just an old copy. It is from Triangle Books out of New York, and it's a 1909 book. But I do not read poems and stuff, so for me, this is totally out there. And maybe I need to start considering reading Kipling poems during Poetry Thursday. I don't know. I've wanted to get involved in that. I'm just not a poetry guy. So maybe I need to try that. I don't know. That might be a goal for this year also. Maybe I'll get more of an appreciation for poetry. I don't know. Number 8. What book are you the most excited to revisit? Okay, so I don't know if it meant from my reading this year that I want to revisit, or if it's just another book into the coming year that I want to revisit. I wasn't sure exactly how that went, so I picked two of them, a fiction and a nonfiction. I picked the John Grisham book, A Painted House. It's one of my favorites. I always recommend it to people who want to dip into John Grisham stuff, but yet they don't really like the legal thrillers, because he does other books other than the legal thrillers. And so A Painted House is one of my all-time favorites. It's a murder, kind of a murder mystery. Nah, I don't know if it's a mystery, but anyway, there's a murder. They live in Arkansas on a cotton farm, and there's a whole storyline in it, and it is absolutely wonderful book, and I plan to get to that one this year. And then the nonfiction that I am super excited to revisit, as always, every spring around March, my kids and I in the classroom, we go and we visit A Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. It is one of my all-time favorite books as far as nonfiction goes. It is from Frederick Douglass, who was a former slave who ran away and got his freedom. He became an abolitionist. He worked through the antebellum period trying to fight for freedom for the slaves, fight for African-American rights. And then after he got it, or after the United States passed the 13th Amendment, he then went into work during the Reconstruction, fighting for civil rights for African Americans. And so I absolutely love it. We read it every year. It is a great, great introduction into just the issues of slavery itself and what, everything that comes with that. But with my Christmas money that I got this year, I purchased a book that I have looked at for the last 5-6 years and finally pulled the trigger and bought it. And it is from the Library of America, Frederick Douglass's 3 autobiographies: Narrative of the Life, which I have read. I have not read My Bondage, My Freedom, and Life and Times. And I plan to fix that this year, or at least the first one, and then maybe next year the next one. But we will reread Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. So super excited about that, as I am every year. Let's see. Number 9, what video are you the most proud of? I was looking back. I don't know if there's like a single video that stands out more than the other ones. I took a group of videos. I really am proud of my book hauls that I have presented this last year. People that come watch my channel tend to like those videos, and they're always asking about recommendations. They're always saying thank you, for showing these. Now I've added it to my TBR, et cetera, et cetera. It always makes me laugh because I imagine everybody else's TBR list, kind of like mine, how you see these books and it just starts adding up and adding up. So I'm very proud of that I've been able to help others find different books that might suit their reading. And I'm also just proud of, just the fact that through my channel, we advertise nonfiction, because nonfiction, on BookTube altogether doesn't always get a fair shake. I personally feel that nonfiction is every bit as good, if not better, than fiction. But that's just my opinion. I know there's other people out there that agree with me, but there's probably some that disagree, but that's okay. But I just want nonfiction to get a fair shake, because there's so much just awesome stuff, and it's not stuff that's just been made up. It's the reality. So anyway, I don't need to go into that. So let's go into, let's see, what are we ready for? Number 10. What is your favorite last line of a book? And so I wasn't really sure on which one to pick, but I picked out this book by John Meacham, Thomas Jefferson, The Art of Power. And I went to page 505, the end of the epilogue, and I want to read the last paragraph to you. I thought it was pretty good. So it says, "The little graveyard sits on the western side of the mountain. When dusk comes, darkness seems to fall slowly. To the east, shadows lengthen over the Rivanna and over Shadwell. They fall over Monticello itself and over Mulberry Row. They fall over his pavilions and his gardens. Only then do the shadows fall over the remains of Thomas Jefferson, a man who always loved the light. I really liked how he ended that book. I thought that was a pretty good line. Yeah, so I wanted to share that one with you. By the way, highly recommend that. It's a very, very good read. So, number 11, bonus. If there is a creator or video you'd like to shout out, or is there a creator or video you'd like to shout out? Yes, I want to shout out, and this will also be a tag. I'm going to tag this person as well. I want to shout out Ben at the History Fellow. Ben is a nonfiction guy just like me. He loves military history. His World War II book hauls and recommendations and all that kind of stuff. And then he just does little snippets of things like this day in history or just important people or events in history. And they're short videos, but they're very informative. And I think he does an awesome job with his channel. He's kind of a quieter guy. He's not really loud and rambunctious, but I like it because you feel safe in his presence. You feel like you're sitting right across the table from him as he tells you history stories. And I enjoy his stuff. I look forward to him continuing his videos. So Ben at the History Fella, I tag you, and I fully appreciate your videos that you put out, your content. Keep it coming, man. Just keep it coming. So anyway, this has been the end of a year book tag. Again, it was done by Kiera the Scrivener, and I saw it on first on Justin at Triumphal Reads. And go check out both of their channels. Like I said, I'll leave the links to their channels down below in the description box. I hope everyone is having a great end of the year. I know that today's New Year's Eve. Stay safe out there. And I also wanted to say, thoughts and prayers to those people out in Colorado with the wildfires that are going on. That stuff is getting pretty ridiculous. The fires are everywhere. And I know my sister-in-law, my prayers go out to my sister-in-law. Her area got the notice to be ready for evacuation, and she showed some pictures from the highway that is pretty close to her house, and there's just the smoke is everywhere. And so to all you people that live out in Colorado, my sister-in-law and her family, Peg at the History Shelf, and I know there's many others. My thoughts and prayers go out to you. I hope you guys stay safe. I hope that just something happens that puts those out. Anyway, thoughts and prayers are with you. So anyway, until next time, BookTube, happy reading.